Hello, I'm Judy. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. On my last video, I discussed and explained just the foundation of the United States government, and I'll quickly review that because it's very important for people to understand our government because then you can understand what the issues are and what our politicians are doing. So, just briefly to simplify it, we have four branches of government, which is the executive power, which is the White House, the president and his cabinet. Congress is the legislative body, which is the senators, 100 senators, and 435 representatives. And you get as many as per population in your state. So if you have a small state like Vermont, you get one. California is a populous state and has 53 representatives, and that's where you have the Republicans and the Democrats, and you have one independent, which is Bernie Sanders, the most popular politician and most popular person in America. So that's the one independent. The third is the Supreme Court. I wanted to say the White House is Republican led, of course, because Trump is Republican and his cabinet's Republican. Congress is Republican led because there's more senators that are Republicans and there's more representatives that are Republican. So that means if just the Republicans voted, they could pass all their laws. They don't need the Democratic votes. So that's why Democrats will often try to pull in bipartisan by getting the Republicans to come on their side to vote into a bill. And sometimes you do have that overlap a lot of times because there's 51 senators and 51 Republican senators and 47 Democrat senators. And I think one independent. Yeah, Bernie Sanders. The Republicans control the White House, they control Congress, and they control the U.S. Supreme Court. There's 9 judges, 5 of them are Republican, and 4 of them are Democratic. And when the Supreme Court makes decisions, they are life-changing decisions that change our history, change the American culture, changes our democracy. It changes every person's life when the Supreme Court makes a decision. One decision was in 1970, Roe versus Wade, which made abortion legal for the first 2 months. Also, another decision was Gideon versus Alabama. In the Gideon one, he said that he did have a lawyer and he couldn't afford a lawyer and he thought he should get a lawyer. The Supreme Court agreed with him and said that he should get a lawyer even if he can't afford one. So what this did, this really significantly helped all of us because now if we can't afford a lawyer, when we go in front of a judge will give us a lawyer or a public defender. And we don't have to be, we have representation. We are offered a free lawyer if we cannot afford a lawyer. And you should not talk to police or anyone unless you talk to your lawyer. I've gone in front of the judge and said, I can't afford my lawyer. And he got me a lawyer within 5 minutes to help me right away. So that was really, really important to help us protect citizens from having good counsel and good representation in their cases. Another one was Wainwright. Wainwright said that he made confessions or said things that shouldn't have been recorded because he didn't know that they were taking down the notes. So Supreme Court agreed with him, and no, I'm sorry, it's called the Miranda, the Miranda case, and the Supreme Court agreed with him, and they said that police must advise people of the Miranda rights, which is, you have the right to remain silent without your lawyer. You don't have to talk, which is true. Anytime you're involved with the police, never talk to the police or say anything without getting your free lawyer, because you could say anything. You don't have to talk at all. You just say, I'm waiting for my free lawyer, my public defender. Those two things significantly helped citizens protect themselves from self-incrimination and also to get good representation. So those are excellent reasons why. Also in 1954, Board versus Brown, that ended segregation in schools. So in 1954, the Supreme Court said that segregating kids race was unconstitutional, so then they desegregated it and they mixed the students together, and now they used to ship the white people out to the other district, or the black people to the black people district. Now you don't do that. It's all, everyone is in their own district where they live. So the Supreme Court is very important. The fourth branch, with the founders said they are a very strong branch, is the people. By the people, for the people, with the people. The people is the fourth branch. We are very important because we elect the officials. We can make petitions to fight against laws that we don't like. We pick the president. We pick our senators. We pick the representatives, the Congress. So we have a lot of power as people. There's 300 million of us against a couple hundred people in the other three branches. We have a lot of power as people to we can protest. We have the First Amendment, that we have the right to protest or assemble, and we have the right to free speech. So we can say whatever we want, and we can assemble, and we can protest laws that we don't like. Like a lot of laws, the Muslim ban, most Americans were against that, so we had a protest at the airports about that. That Muslim ban, banning 8 people from countries, Somalia, Syria, countries I didn't even know that we had a problem with. There's 8 countries that are banned from coming in to America, and also the border wall. We don't need the border wall. According to Trump, Mexicans are criminals and rapists, and okay, and I want him to show me evidence, facts, data, or research that shows that Mexicans commit higher crime rates, or that they're rapists. He has no evidence of that. His only evidence is his distorted reality that he's a paranoid racist, and he wants to build that wall so that he thinks that these very dangerous Mexicans, first of all, Trump doesn't live around Mexicans. I live in California, so I see a lot of Mexicans coming in from Mexico. They're very hardworking people, and they're consumers. They buy products. They're not on welfare. Most welfare people are white people. So the border is just ridiculous. We could be spending that $5 billion for education, college, for food stamps, for Medicare, Medi-Cal, Social Security, a lot of anti-poverty programs that are getting cut, that we need the money for, instead of Trump's paranoid racist ideology that we need to build this big humongous wall because somehow the crazy Mexicans are coming over, which is not true at all. He's just a racist, paranoid person mentality. He needs to base his decisions on evidence, facts, data, research, studies, statistics. You just can't make up things in your head and say it's true. It's not true. Your thoughts are not reality. His thoughts are not, our thoughts are not reality. His are not either. So just because you think something does not mean it's real. Thoughts are just a thought. You have 60,000 thoughts a day. So just because he thinks that doesn't mean it's true. And he thinks a lot of things. He thinks climate change is a Chinese hoax. He took us out of the Paris Agreement. We are the only country in the whole world that is not in the Paris climate. 97% of scientists say climate change is real, and we have empirical data. We have decades of evidence, research, studies, statistics that show that our temperature is rising, the ice is melting, and we are in a climate change unless we do something about it, because it's human made from fossil fuels and carbon emissions and methane emissions. So Donald Trump did a terrible decision by taking us out of the Paris climate. So states are doing it on their own to join the Paris climate without the president. We can do that on our own as a state. Our governor Brown in California said he's going to join the Paris climate without President Trump. We're going to do that because we need that. We need to move to 100% renewable energy, solar, wind, electric. These are things that really impact America, and we're going to be left behind because we're not fighting climate change by stop using fossil fuels, methane gas, and carbon emissions. we have to move out of that, or America is not environmentally is going to be in a really bad place. We're going to have a lot of smog. We're going to have a lot of pollution in the water. We're going to have a lot of pollution in the air, pollution in the land where we grow our crops. Yeah, so that's really important. So those are the four branches: the White House, the Congress, Supreme Court, and the people by the people. And we have a lot of power against the government. 300 million of us have more power than Trump, Congress, or the Supreme Court, because we, like I told you, we have free speech, we have free assembly, we can protest, we can sign petitions to block laws. Yeah, we can do a lot. Politicians in other countries like Paris and Europe, the government is scared of their people. They don't want them to protest. And in Paris, they're known, and in Europe, they're known, in Spain, known for making big protests. The whole country will come out if they don't agree with something the government's doing, and the whole country will come out in cooperation, unity, together to go against the government. And that's why those governments, even in Norway and Iceland and Finland, they're all scared of their own people, their own citizens, because they can like force them out. Like in Finland, they had the companies, and they didn't like them, and then they moved. They fired the people. Union became unions, and the union was stays in the company to make sure that the employees get their benefits and they're treated respectfully by the company. So we have to use the power that other countries use, where their government is scared of the people and the citizens. So we're going to make our government know that we're the boss. The people are the boss. By the people and for the people. That's what the Founding Fathers said about the people. That the people are very strong and more powerful than all the other three branches. Okay, so I said I was going to go in more detail, and today I'm going to talk about the executive branch of our government, which is the White House, which is the president, the vice president, and his cabinet, and they have agencies, committees, and they have boards, and there's hundreds of different committees, boards, and cabinets that have specific things they work on, like Native Americans or Africans or the arts, or just every subject you can think of. They have a committee for that. Every subject we have in America, they have a committee for that, or an agency, or a board, or and of course the cabinet. Our Secretary of State is Rex Tillerson, who also was ExxonMobil CEO. I don't trust him because he's a little biased towards taking money and letting the oil company drill oils in our ocean. And we already know through history that when you drill for oil, there's always leaks. And not little leaks. These are like 300 million gallons of oil that destroy the marine life, the ecosystem, all the whales, the fish, and the animals, even the birds get destroyed when we have an oil spill. So it's not a good idea to do oil spill. And also fracking is not good. You're breaking into the ground, and you're trying to find something, and you're destroying our land by contaminating it by trying to do fracking. So there's a lot of things that our government does that is not the best interest for Americans. So we have to stay on top of the government, which is the White House, Congress, and Supreme Court, and make sure that they do things that's in the best interest of us, of the American citizens, not for themselves. There is a huge problem because in 2010, the Supreme Court did the worst decision ever. They did Citizens United, which said that corporations are people and can give unlimited sums of money. This is just terrible. So now we have the NRA, the pharmaceutical company, banks. We have the Koch brothers, really rich people, that give, they don't give small amounts. I mean, the NRA gives $10 million to their politicians. Ryan got $10 million from the NRA, and yeah, he's going to vote no on strict gun laws because he got $10 million. And when you have many corporations, banks, and rich people giving you money, you change your vote. You're going to change your vote to vote for your donors. Like the tax reform, which is really a massive tax cut for the wealthy, because the wealthy corporations, banks, first of all, they have tax havens in like the Cayman Islands. They hide most of their money there so it doesn't get taxed, so they don't pay federal tax. And then most Americans, we pay 35% taxes. They pay 15%. And we want to raise it to 20%, and they're already starting to whine and cry about it. Okay, they need to go to a 35% tax rate, just like all of us do. So, and also, that's trillions of dollars that could go back in our economy. So it's really not in our best interest not for them to pay for their taxes. If the rich paid for their taxes, we would have trillions more in our economy to help pay for anti-poverty programs, to help improve America, our infrastructure. We have a lot of things we could use that money for, but we lose that money because they pass a tax reform, which is a massive tax cut, so that the donors don't have to, they can put 10 million in or 20 million in and save $1 billion. So it's worth for them to pay people to get their massive tax cuts, because they save billions of dollars from that. So we are really not in a democracy right now, because what's happening, and this shows from the tax reform, that the rich people are buying the politicians, and the politicians are doing whatever the donors want. No strict gun laws, no cheaper medication because of pharmaceutical companies, and a lot of laws that would help protect citizens, American citizens, and that's in our best interest, they will not pass. The Republicans won't pass because they get so much money from donors. So what happens is that we have become an oligarchy. We've become an oligarchy because you have a very rich 1% people, corporations, banks, that's controlling our Republicans and our politicians. Even some Democrats take money too. They're called corporate Democrats, but most Democrats don't take dirty money or money from other companies. They get enough from their constituents, from their people in their state, to be reelected. Like Bernie Sanders, when he did his presidential candidacy, he took no money from corporations, millionaires or billionaires. 100% of all his money, campaign funds, were from the public. $27 at a time, and he was able to get about $80 million from the American people from public funding, while Hillary Clinton had a super PAC, and the Republicans had a super PAC. And Bernie Sanders did really well for 100% public funding. So that's why people trust Bernie, because he cannot be bought. He's been in politics for 50 years, since the civil rights movement he was in, when his first sit-in to oppose segregated housing in college. He did the first sit-in when he was 19 years old, and then he's followed it through to Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. He was involved in that. And he's a very liberal. If you have a spectrum, they call the left the Democrats and the right the Republicans. And Bernie would be way on the extreme of liberalism. That's why he's an independent, but he caucuses with the Democrats. And the Republicans are on the right side, very, very traditional, conservative, Judeo-Christians. Of course, anti-abortion, deregulation, capitalism. Democrats are more, let's help the people, social programs, Medicare, Medi-Cal, Social Security, SNAP program, food stamps, free college, raise the minimum wage. They're more for helping helping the American people thrive and live and have the best interest of American people. Republicans, I don't trust. They're all being bought. They're all being bought. It's an oligarchy. We are not a democracy anymore. We've become an oligarchy. We are also a plutocracy, which means that just a few people, very, very rich people like the Koch brothers, control our government. And that's true. They control our government because we can't pass strict gun laws because the NRA has paid the Republicans. We can't get cheap medication because the pharmaceutical companies has paid the Republicans. And Bernie Sanders said we could import medicine from Canada and would be half the price. And they voted no on that. They voted no on that. The senators voted no and it didn't pass. And that's just ridiculous. So who would turn down getting half off medication? Of course, that didn't make sense. We should have protested that. We need to be like other countries where the government is scared of the people. We need to scare our government and let them know that we are the boss and we control this country, not them. Congress is supposed to represent the people. President is supposed to represent the people. So is the Supreme Court. So when they don't represent us and they don't do things to the best interest for us or do positive things for us and they do things to harm us, we have to stand up, protest, use our free speech, and either try to get people fired that don't do their job, like Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Education. The first thing she did was cut public funding, which is 90% of students go to public schools. So she cut public funding, but she increased money for vouchers for private schools, and she gave it to people who already can afford the private schools. They can already afford it, so they didn't need the money. So that money was wasted on charter schools because she believes that we should have free choice. But it was a mistake because she gave money to people that already had the money to afford the private colleges. I'm sorry, to afford the private charter schools, which actually do very poorly because they're not regulated by anybody. They're not regulated by the government, where public schools have you have to meet a certain grade level, and that's why we have testing to make sure that they read and their math is at grade level, and then the government heavily monitors and regulates our education system by making sure that we do testing. That's why testing is really important in public schools, and they don't have that in charter schools, and they do terrible because a lot of time they're teaching about Christianity. I'm not against Christianity. I'm just saying they're doing Christianity and Bible study instead of learning academics, and they teach creation over evolution, and they're not maintained or regulated by anyone. So they have, and when they compared it, they found out that charter schools are terrible schools. The kids don't meet grade level, and they don't learn as much as in public free schools that 90% of kids go to. So, okay, so I was discussing, I'm going to go over the executive branch, which is the president, and I think I should explain how you become president. So to become president, you have 3 requirements. You have to be a natural born citizen, meaning you were born in America. You have to be 35 years old, and you have to be a U.S. resident for at least 14 years. And then you get to pick what party you're in. You're either the Republican, Democrat, there's an independent, a green group, and there's a couple other little political parties. Like Jill Stein was from the Green Party. And so what happens is a person announces, like in the spring before the election, that they're going to run for president, and then we have a caucus, and that is when the party members meet and discuss and vote for who they think would be best party candidate. So that's a caucus. That would be a caucus in their own party. Like the Democratic caucus would be who would be the best Democratic nominee candidate. And then we have primaries, and at primaries is when party members vote in a state election for the candidate they want to represent them in the general election. So that's why we have those primaries. The early ones are really important because it tells you like who was really strong in the beginning. Like Bernie Sanders won a couple of the early ones really good, and so that showed he had a strong following, and that scared Hillary Clinton, and she started to campaign much more because she didn't know that Bernie Sanders was going to be a threat because he didn't have any money, but she didn't know that public funding can give you millions of dollars. He started with $20 million because of the public sending in like $27 worth of donations, and it added up. So we have the primaries where the people in the state pick who they want to be in it. And the last one was with Hillary and Bernie Sanders, and Bernie was winning in the beginning. And then you go to the National Convention to select a presidential nominee. The party's presidential nominee announces his choice for vice president. So before the National Convention, we find out that we have superdelegates that have made pledges, just pledges, not votes, and they, before the convention, they have divided the pledges between the candidates that are up for nomination. And when they did the delegates for Bernie Sanders and Hillary had the majority of the superdelegates. I would have to say, I'm going to have to explain what superdelegates is, but it's outdated, it's antiquated, and we don't need it. We need to pick a president by a popular vote, not by a superdelegate vote, because a superdelegate means they're a person, a Democrat, it's a Democratic Party, it's a Democrat, and they can choose whoever they want. They don't have to agree with their constituents. They don't have to agree with the popular vote. They can just vote their own conscience, which I don't like that. Why would we have superdelegates? We have the popular vote. The people's vote count more than the party's vote. That just confuses the whole election by having superdelegates who pledge, and then at the convention say they pledge, but they haven't actually voted because they can change at the last moment. So, and the superdelegates, yeah, that's very outdated, antiquated. We don't need superdelegates. They're just the Democratic Party or the Republican Party's people voting on their own, and they're not even helping their own constituents. So it's just meaningless. It's useless to have them. We don't even need them. Why? Why do we need superdelegates? Well, one reason they say is because they don't want to have people that are non-Democrats that don't identify as Democrat, and they're independent or green or whatever, and they vote, and they might be able to pick the president instead of the Democratic people picking the president. So they use the superdelegates to help get the Democrats picked in case those people that don't identify with the party, Democrats will come in and pick a Democratic nominee just in case that happens, that more people that are not Democrats vote for another person, like a person in the Green Party or the Independent Party. So that's why superdelegates are scared. They're scared that they might not vote for a Democrat, and they want to make sure that people from Independent or Green Party don't take their nomination. So that's the only reason, but we don't need that. We need to make voting very simple, a popular vote. Trump, okay, first of all, Trump won, and I was traumatized. I think I had PTSD from it, because when he won, I just couldn't believe it. I thought it was a nightmare. I needed to wake up. Anyway, whatever, it's a long story. I won't go into Trump. Obviously, I don't like him. So Hillary lost the electoral votes. Trump was able to get, there's 538 electoral votes, and the electoral votes go by how many people, population, it goes by how many senators you have and how many representatives you have. So California has 2 senators and 53 representatives. So 53, 54, 55. So we have 55 electoral votes in California. So it depends on 2 senators and how many representatives you have, and that's how many electoral votes you have. Okay, so electoral votes are outdated and antiquated. Why do we need electoral votes? And they say that they vote with their constituent. Well, if they're going to vote for the constituent, don't vote anyway. Just vote normally as a normal citizen. We don't need electoral votes. Trump won the electoral votes, but Hillary won the popular vote by 3 million votes. 3 million more people wanted Hillary over Trump. So the popular vote should win. We need to get away from the electoral vote, which is outdated, antiquated, and useless, and it doesn't make any sense. Why do we? It should only matter what the people vote. We don't need to have electoral votes or superdelegate votes. Both of those are all outdated. There's a petition right now that's going out asking that we vote for president on the popular vote. And I totally agree with that. We need to simplify it so people don't get confused. Because if I vote for a person and then the Democratic person, the super delegates vote for a different person, then why did I vote? My vote doesn't count because the super delegates, there's 3,000 of them or something like that. There's thousands of super delegates. And if they vote for somebody else and I voted for Bernie and they vote for Hillary, well, my vote got canceled out. So if our vote is supposed to count as American citizens, then we need to leave out superdelegates and electoral votes. Those are totally outdated, antiquated, and we don't need it. We need to simplify it to a popular vote. If that would have happened with Hillary Clinton, she would have won the popular vote with 3 million people. But I'm sorry, you know what? Trump said that illegal people voted illegally, which he has no evidence, of course. You know, he just talks to talk. He has a big problem with fantasy in his mind. He makes up things. Okay? So what happens is it goes to the caucus. They vote for their nominee. The primaries. It goes to the primaries in each state, and they choose who they want. And Bernie Sanders and Hillary were pretty close. And then they went to the national convention. But before the convention, they already knew that Hillary had most of the super delegates, and that's why Bernie dropped out, and then he supported Hillary because he didn't have superdelegate votes, and he knew he was going to lose. And so that's why Bernie Sanders would have made it, because he had the popular vote. He would have won more popular votes than Hillary Clinton. The reason Hillary Clinton didn't win is because people don't like the establishment. Hillary is the establishment. She's been the establishment since her husband was in White Office. She represents the establishment, which means that she has a super PAC. She has donors. She gets money from foreign countries. Americans just didn't trust Hillary, and Trump lied and said he was not going to cut Medicare, Medi-Cal, Social Security, and that he was going to drain the swamp, and he was going to make America safe. He lied, and he lied, and he lied, and people believed him, and they said, well, at least he's going to change things. We know Hillary's crooked, and she's the establishment, so that's why he won. But she won 3 million popular votes. So we need to win the presidential vote by popular vote only. Our votes have to count over electoral and stupid super delegate votes. We don't need those anymore. Simplify it and make it a popular vote. So that's my stance. So when we have the National Democratic Convention, they by that time it was Hillary, because she had gotten the super delegates. Before the convention, you pretty much know who got all the super delegates. Like when it was Obama and Clinton, Obama had gotten most of the super delegates, and they were pretty close. And there's 538 electorals, and you need to, whoever gets 271st of electoral votes is going to win the presidential nomination. But I think it shouldn't count. It should go by popular vote, by our vote. So the president candidates campaigns, and then when she won the convention, and then now she moves forward and she does a vigorous campaign, presidential campaign throughout the whole country. And to be president, takes is very, very expensive. The estimated cost to run a presidential campaign, a presidential machine where you have pay for ads, flyers, TV ads, ads online, $500 million. $500 million is estimated. That's how much Obama and Hillary spent. That's how much the last few presidents spent. Was about $500 million, $500 million. So I can see why some candidates might be tempted to use a super PAC. A super PAC is when corporations and many other companies come together to make a super PAC and put in as much money as they can to help their candidate win. Hillary had a super PAC. She had a big super PAC. And so did Obama. The only one that did not have a super PAC was Bernie Sanders. He had a public funding from ordinary people of $27 average. Okay, so on election day, people in every state vote. So they vote. When people cast their vote, they are actually voting for a group of people called electors. So when we vote, we're voting for the electors. The number of electors in each state gets is equal to its total number of senators and representatives. I already told you that. So your senator and your representative, and that's how many electoral votes you get. So in essence, whatever the constituents people vote in their state, that's what the electoral votes should go to. But that doesn't happen most of the time. Most of the time, the electoral goes against the state constituents. So that's why I don't agree with the electoral or the superdelegate. It's outdated and antiquated. So the newly elected president picks his vice president, and then they get whoever gets the 270. It doesn't matter what the popular vote is. It only matters with the superdelegate before the convention and the 270 to win in the presidential election. So whoever's the first to get 270 wins. That's how you become president. Trump got the 270 first, but Hillary got 3 million more popular votes. That's why we should vote by popular vote. So let's see what else we have here. Oh, that's also another thing is that people, super delegates, this is why I really think we need to get rid of super delegates. Super delegates can be bribed. They can be given money and gifts to vote for another candidate that they don't want. So if they get $5 million and they were going to vote on one person, and now because they got the $5 million, they're going to vote on another person because of money. So super delegates get paid money and gifts they get bought and bribed to pick a certain candidate. So their vote really is very, very biased and very, very corrupt, because they're not voting for who they really want. They're voting for what their donors want. That's why I don't like super delegates, because they can be bribed. There's no law saying they can't accept money or gifts. That's why I don't like that. They're not voting for who they really want or who the best candidate is. So super delegates have to go and electorals have to go. Only popular votes. We need to really simplify this. The only thing that matters is what the people vote on. 300 million of us, okay? And you can't change. Democrats just can't come in and change and choose whoever they want because of how much money they got or what the gifts they got. So that's why they've got to go. What else is there? Okay, that's pretty much for the super delegates. So that's how you become president. Okay, so you get your party picks you. You go to a caucus. They pick the person they want, and then they have primaries in each state, and then they vote for who they want. And then the super delegates make pledges, not votes, pledges, and actually they can change their pledge at the very last second until they vote. So, but they're tainted because they can be bribed. So that's not fair. That's not fair that the best person like Bernie Sanders is not going to get voted on because they got $10 million to vote against Bernie and vote for Hillary. So that's not fair. It's not a fair. Electorals are not fair and superdelegates are not fair. Okay, let's talk about that's the executive. That's how you become a president. A very, very complex, like 2-year campaigning. You usually do it like in 2015 in the spring. They talked about it. Everyone started to come out who was going to be president, and we knew there were like 10 Republicans up for a nomination, and there was only two Democrats. No, actually 3. There was somebody else, but he dropped out, and then that left Bernie and Hillary, which they were totally polar opposites. Totally polar opposite. He's very honest, upfront. He cares about the American people. She represents the establishment, and I don't know. She's passed some laws that cause people harm in America. She's passed a lot of laws. She voted. She voted for Iraq because Bush said they might have weapons of mass destruction. The only problem with this is that a lot of countries have weapons of mass destruction. So does Russia, so does the Soviet Union, so does the Middle East, so does Europe, so does Canada, so does the UK. All countries have weapons of mass destruction. That was his excuse for him and Donald Rumsfeld to enter into Iraq, but actually it was really unconstitutional. Oh no, it wasn't unconstitutional. He did get Congress to declare war on Iraq. The only people that can declare war is Congress. The president is not the king. He just can't do what he wants with the military. He can, after he gets an authorization from Congress, he can direct the forces, the weapons, and the intel, and he gets help from the Secretary of Defense, General Mattis, his Secretary of Defense, and they work together to work on what our armed forces are going to do. Right now, the important thing in the White House is the wars resolution. Bernie Sanders and 2 other Republican senators have a resolution that says that America is fighting to help fight, is aiding Saudi Arabia to fight Yemen, and we are. We sold them $110 billion worth of weapons. We're refueling their planes. Like 1,600 planes we refueled in the air for them so they can fly longer and bomb more schools and hospitals. And we're doing the intel. We're helping them target targets from our own airspace, and we're training them. We're using a lot of our military intel, weapons, and resources to help Saudi Arabia because they're our ally and we want cheap gas. Okay, I don't think it's worth cheap gas when what happened is Saudi Arabia is fighting with the Houthis that's on the border of Saudi Arabia. And the Houthis are Shiites and the Saudi Arabians are Sunni. They're more Sunni. They don't want the Houthi Shiites to take over Yemen, so that's why Saudi Arabia is in the Yemen war. But I don't understand what it has to do with the Yemen people. The Yemen people have nothing to do with it at all. And when they drop those bombs, they don't know if they're dropping it on a Yemen person or a Houthi Shiite person. So the bombings are just ridiculous, outrageous, and unacceptable to drop bombs on Yemen people. They're specifically dropping bombs on 470,000 houses, 270 schools, and 310 hospitals. Doctors Without Borders left because they didn't feel safe, and then also Saudi Arabia dropped 9 bombs on their port, so ships can't bring containers of humanitarian aid is blocked up. They also blew up the bridges where you can bring in the humanitarian aid. So right now, Yemen is in the worst famine in history. 17 million people are slowly starving to death. You have babies and children. Every 5 minutes, a child under 5 dies from starvation. And they have cholera, dysentery, malaria. These are all very preventable diseases. It's because they don't have clean water, they don't have medical supplies, and they're blocked off. Saudi Arabia did a really good job of blocking all of Yemen off to humanitarian aid. They can't get any food, water, or medical supplies in there. Okay, so this resolution that Bernie and the other Republican says that President Trump put us in Saudi Arabia without declaration of war from Congress. So this is an unconstitutional war. This is an unauthorized war, and we need to get out of Saudi Arabia, which I totally agree with them. We did not get a declaration of war from Congress, and we did not get authorization to be there. And we are really helping them a lot, refueling their planes with intel, with our resources, helping them to bomb specific targets. We need to get out of that. And we're hurting the Yemen people. The Yemen people don't have anything to do. Saudi Arabia doesn't care about the Yemen people. They're fighting the Houthis and the Shiites. I don't know why they're attacking the Yemen people. That makes no sense. So we need to get out of there, and we need to immediately send aid, food, water, and medical supplies, and clean water to the Yemen people. 17 million people starving to death slowly because we can't get aid in there. And the U.S., since they caused a lot of that infrastructure damage, and because they helped bomb and refuel the planes, the United States has a responsibility and the morality to help the Yemen people fight the famine, bring in food, water, and medical supplies, because we helped do the damage. So we need to get in there and help those people before they all starve to death. Every 5 minutes, a child dies. So, in a day, every 5 minutes would be 200 kids in a day? It's ridiculous. You see children, babies, on videos, and the babies and the children cry all day long because they're starving. They don't understand why they're not getting fed, so they cry all day long, and the mothers don't have enough nutrition and water to breastfeed. So they really need baby formula, and they need baby food. If you don't get milk and food when you're a baby, you have a stunted growth, your brain does not develop fully, and that makes a permanent damage. Once your growth is stunt, you stop growing. You're gonna grow a lot less than you would, and your brain doesn't develop. Your neurons are not connecting. They're not getting nutrition. Your brain takes up 20% of your calories, but if you have no calories, your brain is essentially losing all its neurons. So those babies, they're skin and bones, they cry all day, meaning they're suffering. When you hear a baby cry all day starving, it's the most horrifying noise and most frightening noise. And it's so sad to hear a starving baby cry all day long. And America, the United States, Trump, Congress, I've already emailed my senators and representatives and said we need to get in Yemen immediately and get the food, water, and medical supplies in there to help save them. They're in the worst famine in history. 17 million Yemen people. They're also the poorest country. I don't know why Saudi Arabia will pick on a poor country. That's just ridiculous. And then Obama took us into Saudi Arabia, which is, he did not have Congress's authorization, and it's unconstitutional. So I don't know how they let him keep going to Saudi Arabia. Obama did not have a declaration from Congress. Only Congress can declare war. He did not have that authorization. So he entered into a war to aid Saudi Arabia for cheap oil and to keep them as our allies, we don't really need Saudi Arabia as our ally. They're very backwards. They still behead people. Women can't drive or vote. They still have child marriages. Women are raped. They're still a really old Middle East country that is very harsh punishment. Like if a woman gets found guilty or something, they bury her to the top. They cover her head and they throw stones at her. They still do things like that. Barbaric. They're still barbaric. So we don't even have we don't even share values with Saudi Arabia. So okay, we'll pay more for gasoline, just to get out of Saudi Arabia because it's not worth it. We're killing Yemen people. That's ridiculous. And in fact, during Obama's administration, he sent drones into Yemen, and he killed hundreds of Yemens. That's our drones being shot into Yemens. Why are we killing innocent Yemenis people that didn't do anything to America? That was just a really, really bad judgment on Obama to send drones. And he lied on TV and said, "Oh, we didn't kill any civilians." Well, who are you? You're shooting at a hospital and schools and houses. Who do you think you're killing? The Houthis are not in the hospitals. The Houthis are not in the schools. They just destroyed Yemen's whole infrastructure and destroyed the entrance points for humanitarian aid to get into, and that needs to stop. We need to stop Saudi Arabia immediately. So you want to email your senators and tell them to vote on the resolution to get out of Saudi Arabia, to stop helping Saudi Arabia, and to help Yemen immediately. You can call your representatives. You can call your senators. I have. They've heard me a couple times. They know me because I'm constantly calling them or emailing them. And my senators are actually very good about replying, except for my representative, Ed Royce. He hasn't replied to some of my emails, so I'm not really happy with him. And he's a Republican anyway, and he's not going to be going in for election. So I'm really glad, and I'm hoping a Democrat can replace him, because he went along with most of Trump's ideas and ideology and agendas. He voted for the tax reform, and he just voted on a lot of things that caused harm to Americans. When politicians vote against our best interest, that's a serious problem. We need to deal with that politician. We need to assemble, and we need to protest that. We can't have politicians passing laws that hurt us. The Congress is a legislative body. That means they make laws, and the laws they pass that our founding fathers said should represent us, the best interest of the people. That's what the founding fathers said that Congress was for. They represent the people, and the laws they pass should not harm us. But they pass a lot of laws that harm us. When they don't pass strict gun laws, that harms us. When we have to pay more for pharmaceutical drugs, that harms us. When they cut Medicare, Medi-Cal, and Social Security and the food stamp, which they are, that harms us, because we have 48 million people living in poverty. We have 54 million seniors who live in poverty, who on Social Security, they only get $1,000 a month. What can you do with $1,000 a month? Social Security. They act, Republicans act like that we're lazy and we're asking for luxury items. These are not luxury items. People are just asking for food stamps to feed their family, for health care, so they can get over being sick in case they have cancer or diabetes or a heart disease. You know, they want preventive medication, and they need the Medicare, they need the Medi-Cal. The seniors need the Medicare, and they need their Social Security. And we have disabled and mentally ill people. We have homeless people, mental homeless people, 10 million or 15 million homeless people in America, and they live in tent cities because rent is so high, especially in California. It's very, very high. Like a one bedroom is $1,500. So a person making $10 minimum wage, there's no way they can afford housing. That's why they live in tents. That's why I was shocked. There's a riverbed here in Santa Ana, and about 1,000 homeless people live there. And I found out that most of those people work, and a lot of them even have 2 jobs. So, so they work a full-time minimum job, and then they have a part-time minimum wage job, and that's still not enough to get rent. The only thing you can hope for is to rent a room from somebody for like $700, $800, $900. Otherwise, they're $1,500 for a 1-bedroom. Nobody can afford that. That's why people live in tents. And a lot of people in Orange County is complaining about them, about the trash and the drugs. They should, because we have nowhere to put those 1,000 people, homeless people. The police should have a police presence there all the time, and they should have a trash pickup, and they should have a cleanup crew to help that, and they should have a rehab center there, porta potties. If they're gonna live there, make it livable, make it clean, and make it drug free and crime free. That's what I'm saying. They're trying to force the homeless people out of there. I don't know where they're going to go, so I don't understand what that problem is. Okay, so president is the executive branch. President, vice president, the cabinet, executive departments, independent agencies, boards, commissions, and committees about every subject you can think of in America. The president carries out and enforces law. He is the commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces. And Secretary of State, you should know, is Rex Tillerson. He's an important person. Usually he welcomes foreign ambassadors. He's in the White House a lot. He goes overseas to embassies to check them out. He's a very important person in the White House. The president is responsible for execution and enforcement of laws created by Congress, because only Congress can create laws, and only the president can veto or pass a law. But he's also 8 things. He's chief of the state, he's chief executive, he's chief administrator, he's chief diplomat, he's commander-in-chief, he's chief legislator, he's the party chief, he's a chief citizen, and he is supposed to be the symbol of all people. Trump should be the symbol of all people. And important things he does is he directs the foreign policies. He makes key decisions on how the U.S. will act toward other countries. He develops federal policies. He prepares national budgets. He enforces federal laws. He appoints federal officials like his cabinet and judicial judges. And he has power to sign or veto legislation. He can command the armed forces only with Congress's approval. He can ask for written approval from his cabinet, and he can convene or adjourn Congress. He can grant reprieves. He can grant pardons, and he can receive ambassadors from other countries. Foreign countries is very important for our foreign policy to get along with other countries. And he has special executive powers as a president. He has constitutional powers, and he has delegate powers, which is granted by Congress. And then he also has inherent powers because he's the chief executive branch of the White House. So those are his presidential powers. President Trump, in a year, he signed a lot of executive orders, but he has not signed any major legislation. I mean, any legislation that improves the lives of Americans. None that I know of. And I know because I get the White House email every day. That's an important thing. You should go to your senator's website and sign up for the newsletter, and your senator will always send you updates of what's happening in the White House and what they're working on. And also your representative and your congressman, be on their newsletter because they will always send you information on what they're doing and what's happening in the government. And also the White House, you should be in the newsletter of the White House. I get a White House synopsis every day of what the president's doing, what he's done, what he's working on, And that's really important. I like to know what's happening in the White House, and also I get the Supreme Court. They'll let me know if a case is up, and I'll listen to the case to see if it's going to pass, if it's going to be a good decision or a bad decision. But there's 5 Republicans, so so I really worry about the Supreme Court because there were 5 Republicans, only 4 Democrats. So and actually, that's the executive branch. The president and the vice president is really there in case the president dies. He also helps in Congress sometimes to break a vote. If they're voting on somebody to be confirmed and it's a 50-50 vote, he can break the vote. And he also helps in the House of Representatives with Paul Ryan. So that's the executive branch. The president, vice president, his cabinet, his agencies, all the committees, the boards, and hundreds of committees that he has, and they all specialize in certain subjects. Like Native Americans, African Americans, art, literature, to make sure we have a committee for everything. So if you ever want to find out or talk about a subject, all you have to do is look at the White House and click on agencies and committees and boards, and you will find a committee for the subject you want to know about or one that you want to make a comment about. So if you keep contact with your senators, you can also call your senators. They like calls. They take calls all the time. I call them all the time. I'm sure she knows me by now. Oh, it's Judy again. So it's good to have those newsletters, those emails from the senators and the representative and the Congress and the White House, because that will keep you really on top of what's happening in the White House, what's happening in Congress, and what's happening in the Supreme Court. I also have newsletters from Republicans because I want to know what their perspective is. I'm like, I want to know what Paul Ryan is doing. Paul Ryan, okay, needs to be fired. He has this very, very strong will that he really wants to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medi-Cal, and food stamps. For some reason, that's a very strong thing he wants to do. I don't think he understands. We have 48 million people who live in poverty. We have 100 million people who make $30,000 or less. That's almost poverty. You have 54 million seniors and 15,000 homeless people. What part is he going to just tell these people, sorry, we don't have food stamps, we have a budget, but we can build a wall and we can give massive tax cuts, but we can't pay Social Security or Medicare and Medi-Cal for health care? Okay? Also, what there is debating in Congress is health care, and I'm voting for Bernie Sanders' universal health care, which means the government pays for it, everything, and you just walk in with your card and everything's paid. You just pay for your prescription, which is going to be lower because we're going to try to get our drugs from Canada, which would make it half the price. So that's the importance of the executive branch. You understand that you can keep on top of the president by getting the White House newsletter email, and that'll keep you on top. You get one every day, so that will get you into knowing what's happened. And I'm a Democrat, but I get a Republican newsletters all the time because I want to know what they're doing. If I know what they're doing, then I can understand what's happening between both parties, and I don't just have one side. I have both sides. I can see the pros and the cons of an issue, and most of the time I hope they work as a partisan. That just means they work together and to pass good laws that help us Americans and do not harm us. So, but I believe we have a serious problem in Congress, in our government, because we're an oligarchy. Very rich corporations and very rich people are bribing our politicians and changing the laws and harming us by not passing laws to protect us from guns, from anything, from smog, climate change, oil drilling, fracking, anything like that. So my next video will be to talk about Congress and tell you the difference between the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, the Independent Party, and the Green Party. So I didn't mean for this to go over, but I guess I just kind of got out of. I got away with talking more about the executive power. So anyway, that's the whole executive power. You understand how a president becomes a president. Superdelegates, electorals is outdated, antiquated, and needs to end before the next 2020 election, because we don't need that. We just need to know, what do the people vote on, the popular vote. Okay, especially since superdelegates can be bribed. They take money and gifts to change their vote. They're not voting in their best interests. Superdelegates, no, they're corrupt. They need to go. We don't need that. Why do we even need it in the first place? So, or electoral votes. We don't need that. Why? We have popular votes. 3 million more people voted for Hillary. Most of America didn't want Trump. In fact, he has I think a 15% approval rate right now. That means an 85% disapproval rate. And he makes terrible judgment. His terrible judgment. He's doing a lot of things that harm America. He's dismantling the EPA. He's not fighting climate change. Wants to build a stupid border wall because he's paranoid and racist. He hasn't even been around Mexicans. I live around Mexicans. I live in California. I mind them all the time. There's no problem. There's not more crime because there's more Mexicans. His Muslim ban, okay, half those countries I didn't even know we had problems with. Somalia, when did we have problems with Somalia? Okay, they do have pirates in the oceans, that's true. But there's some African nations I didn't know we had problems with. Why are they banned from coming here? We should, I believe, support and bring in Syrian refugees over here. Because Syria is destroyed. Assad has destroyed all the infrastructure, school, hospitals, and he keeps constantly bombing, and he's putting chemical warfare. The last one, 1,400 people died in Damascus. You don't see any wounds or blood, but what happens is that the poison gets into the nervous system, it freezes the diaphragm, and the lungs fill up with fluid, so it takes 30 minutes for them to slowly suffocate to death. It is the most gruesome, horrifying picture to watch a baby or a child slowly suffocate for half an hour. All you see him go, I mean, that's just terrible. If that was me, I'd be like, just shoot me. I don't want to suffer for half an hour. So what you see, I saw, were all children and babies. Babies. And it only takes a small amount of gas. It's odorless and it's colorless. So you don't know that it's there unless you start breathing it and you get symptoms. But actually we have an antidote, which I have told my senators about. There's an antidote called atropine. If you put that immediately needle into the person as soon as they show symptoms, that will counteract most of the poison and save their lives. And I've asked my senators and Congress to send the atropine to Syria in case they have another gas attack, and they can inject the atropine and save their lives. So I mean, I'm just, yeah, we're not an oligarchy. We're an oligarchy, a plutocracy. We are no longer a democracy. We 300 million strong Americans can protest, do our free speech, assemble, and fight and get our government back, which means we have to overturn Citizens United so we can make bribery illegal. And I don't know how that works. An ordinary citizen like me can only donate up to $2,300, and a corporation and super PACs can give unlimited amount of money. How is that legal? Why do they get to put unlimited amounts of money, like $100 million, and I can only, as a citizen, put only $2,300? More than that, I'm breaking the law. We've got to take our democracy back. And history shows over and over and over the slavery, the civil rights, women's rights. We don't get it. We have to fight for it. We have to fight for it We have to protest. We have to sign petitions. We have to let our politicians and government know that we have the right to our government. We want our government back from the super rich people, corporations, banks, NRA, pharmaceutical companies. They don't own our government. We own our government. For the people and by the people. Okay? So when you start understanding now you understand the executive branch very well now since I explained it. And I'll talk about Congress on my next video. So I'll tell you what a real Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green Party, all the parties, and exactly what they all represent and what their differences are. And so and I'm doing this because I notice that a lot of people don't understand the government. They don't understand politicians. They'll say, "Oh, I heard so-and-so talk about." I don't know what they were talking about. And like I said, you can solve that problem by getting their newsletter in your email from your senators, your representative, your congressman, the president, and get it from the Republicans too. And then you kind of see like, okay, I got one from Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz. Was it Rubio? I got one from Rubio, and he was asking for donations, and he's a Republican. Of course, I'm not gonna give a vote for him. I hope he loses to a Democrat. Yeah, he wanted to repeal Obamacare without a replacement. He thinks we should cut Medicare, Medi-Cal, Social Security. Anyone that wants to cut anti-poverty programs, I'm totally against them. I'm totally against them, and I want them to be out of office, get voted out of office, and not be elected again. And I'm going to start writing a name of who these people are and what they're doing to harm us by cutting our anti-poverty programs, not giving us free college, not raising the minimum wage, oil drilling, fracking, the climate change. There's a lot of things that our government is doing to harm us because they're not doing something to stop it, and it's going to harm us. And they need to do things that are in the best interest to help us thrive and survive in America. And they're not doing that because they're too busy collecting millions of dollars from their donors. So we're going to fight. Our revolution from Bernie Sanders is a political revolution to get our government back. There's also Cenk Uygur has Wolfpack, which is to overturn Citizens United and to get our government back. There's a lot of nonprofit organizations that understand that we need to overturn Citizens United, get money out of politics, only do public financing. And we need to fight against politicians that go against our interests, that actually harm us. So we need to come together like other countries and make the government scared of us, the people. When we stand in front of the Capitol or the White House and we protest, the president sees that, Congress sees that, and they take that seriously. Okay, my next video will be on Congress, on the political parties. I'm sorry this went a little long, and be kind to each other, and I'll talk to you next time. Good night.